Hey guys, Roast here with another Realm video. Today, in light of the recent event, I figured it would be a great time to finally make a Fungal and Crystal Caverns guide video. If you've been trying Exalt dungeons, but you haven't gone past Nest and Lost Halls and Cultist Hideout, Fungal and Crystal Caverns are going to be the next step in your progression. But even if you haven't done any Exalts yet, Fungal really isn't a bad one to start with. I'll cover everything you need to know, from how to clear the dungeon and what enemies to watch out for, to how do they handle the bosses, and what loot, pots, and exalts you will get from these dungeons. If you're new, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any more great content. But for now, let's get straight into it with the basics of the Fungal and Crystal Caverns. Fungal and Crystal Caverns are tied together much like Lost Halls and the Void are, meaning you can't do the Crystal Caverns unless you just cleared Fungal Caverns. Both caverns require you to wander through the dungeon, destroying purple crystals to charge the Dwarf Miner's drill. A chat callout will pop out every 25%, and once the drill is at 100% energy, you can go to the drill room and begin the boss fight. These purple crystals you have to destroy are the only drop source of Deca Rings, so if you're hunting those, feel free to just destroy all the crystals and full clear the dungeon, but know that if you're not solo, people may move on without you into the boss room. Once you defeat the Fungal Caverns boss, you can enter the Crystal Portal to enter the Crystal Caverns. In my opinion, while the minions of Crystal Cavern are more dangerous due to their instant pop mechanics, the Crystal Cavern boss is actually much easier than the Fungal Cavern boss, so I would give Crystal Caverns a shot as soon as you start clearing Fungals. With the basics covered, let's move on to the Fungal Cavern minions. Now, in terms of minions, Fungal Cavern is populated by an assortment of mushrooms and a few worms. If you are melee, be very cautious, as most enemies here fire radial shotguns that can do large amounts of damage if they're on top of you. The most dangerous enemy, in my opinion, is the yellow worm, as it jumps to players and can kill you very easily with its radial shotguns if you are not careful. A character with the slow makes clearing things much easier, and ranged players should have no issues blasting things from afar and proceeding to the boss. With minions and clear covered, let's talk about the Fungal Caverns boss. The Fungal Caverns boss is the Crystal Worm Mother. She will circle around the room, firing shots from her head, tail, and some from her body segments. The most important shots to dodge throughout the fight are the small blue hexagons and the purple diamonds, as these inflict quiet, which drains your mana and prevents spellcasting for a few seconds. If you are an important role like a stunner or slower, this can be very dangerous for your group if you suddenly stop performing that role, so typically the best place to stand will be slightly ahead of the boss's head. The first two phases see the head as invulnerable with a few vulnerable body segments, and once a few of these are destroyed, the head becomes vulnerable and needs to be damaged to 60% to progress phases. The boss will alternate between circling the room and chasing players during these phases. Crystal water will also spawn around the edges of the room at this point, so don't walk in it. It does even more damage than lava, and throughout the fight this water will creep inward and inward and inward, and the arena will get smaller and smaller and smaller. At 60%, the boss returns to circling the room, and the Crystal Wormfather ad will spawn in the center of the room, firing radial shots. Your best bet here, if there's no mystic to stasis the circling mother worm, is to position yourself on the opposite side of the arena from that positioning Crystal Mother to give yourself plenty of time to avoid her shots while avoiding the shotguns from the boss in the center. After the Crystal Wormfather in the center is killed, the boss on the outside becomes vulnerable to damage, and 4 segments must be destroyed, after which the head becomes vulnerable, and it must also be damaged down to 40%. This next phase is what most players view as the hardest part, so get ready. The Yellow Worm Child will spawn in, and the boss will return to circling the room like with the Crystal Wormfather phase. While the Worm Child has segments, it isn't as dangerous, but once it becomes just the head, will begin firing its Yellow Flower attack. This has slain many an 8/8 and myself on occasion. Your 3 options for this attack are: 1. Ideally, rotate clockwise on the inside loop to continue doing damage through the attack. 2, if you have high range, you can soak a hit or 2 on the outside and still hit the enemy while rotating against it to avoid additional shots. Or 3, if you cannot handle this attack, you can just hide far away, if it's not in the center, and hope other players deal with it. Once this phase is done, congrats, you've beaten the hardest part, but don't let up yet. The next phase, the boss will circle the room firing boomerang yellow shots just like the Worm Child but with much lower intensity. After the final few segments are destroyed, the head will slowly chase players around, firing red armor-piercing shotguns, and once the tail is destroyed, the queen adds blue shotguns until she is destroyed. Congrats, you've just done your first Fungal Cavern. On to the Crystal Caverns. We'll start with the minions. The minions in Crystal Caverns are not terrible, but it should be noted that there are far more instant pop mechanics, so be extra cautious your first few times here, as looking away for even a moment can mean your doom. The enemies of note are the Crystal Wormchild, which makes an appearance with its boomerang yellow shots, perfect for practicing that phase if you want to get some extra practice in, and some blue tower-like enemies that will rush you with radial blasts that can be lethal if they get close enough. Continue clearing the crystals, just like in Fungal, until the drill is charged to 100%, and then head to the boss room. The Crystal Cavern's final boss is the Crystal Entity. In my opinion, this boss is much easier than the Worm Mother, but has far more instant pops, so be very careful with them. This fight is pretty straightforward, alternating between 3 summon mini-bosses and 3 boss damage phases that progressively get harder and harder. The single most important mechanic to watch out for through this entire fight, whole time, is the green bomb arrow. The boss in the center will show a green arrow pointing in the cardinal directions, and don't think of it as a when you see it run, think of it as it's a spinner, and wherever it stops, that is where you need to not be. Once it stops, a gray bomb will fire in a direction. This is the fractal attack of the boss, and it will split into first a set of orange bombs and then a set of purple bombs as it goes. After the initial set of bombs, the secondary and third sets of bombs will appear from nowhere, and they will lead to a free character slot if you decide to stand in the direction the arrow is pointing. In terms of mini-bosses, there are 5 total: the Crystal Lizard, the Crystal Cyclops, the Crystal Fish, the Crystal Scorpion, and finally the Crystal Monstrosity. The most dangerous of these are the Fish and the Monstrosity, but I'll cover each in detail here. The Fish teleports while invisible, similar to some of the ads going to O3, and then fires instant pop shotguns, so during this fight, stay mobile and watch your minimap to avoid death. The Monstrosity will chase you while firing a line of projectiles that will instant pop after a short delay. It also fires confused lightning bolts and blind grenades. Any of these can be lethal, but in my opinion, the confuses are most important to dodge, and then if you get hit by a blind grenade, watch your HP, because it is nearly impossible to see any additional blind bombs that come in your direction, and they do a lot of damage and can stack up and kill you if you're not careful. The Scorpion slowly chases the group, firing radial shots before turning into many small scorpions. And you kill a couple of these until the true Scorpion is revealed, but be cautious as the little ones explode into big AoE on death. After the main boss re-emerges, watch out for the big spike strike indicators, and then finish the mini-boss. The lizard is a little bit dangerous, but you can either safe spot its barrage near the center of the room, or stand far away from the corner it rotates to, and just try to soak as few of the arrows as possible. Sometimes navigating this can be a little bit tricky, so have your pots ready. And finally, the Cyclops is the lowest threat of all the mini-bosses, firing lines of projectiles that detonate along the path, but like the lizard, it can be safe spotted in the center. Standing outside of where the Cyclops is standing, however, is ill-advised due to the large shotguns he fires outside. After each of these mini-bosses is dealt with, there will be a damage phase. In this phase, the boss in the center becomes vulnerable and fires radial shots with with the little orange pentagons all around the arena, turning into arrows that fire targeted at players. After firing, they flash blue, during which they cannot fire again. There will be more projectiles added each time, but the main thing again in this phase is to rotate to avoid the bomb and spot dodge the orange arrows, and you should be fine. Do each of these mechanics 3 times, and congrats on finishing the Crystal Caverns. Now, let's talk about the loot. The Fungal and Crystal Caverns are, number 1, your Wisdom Exalt, both of them, and therefore a full clear will actually get you 2 Exalt points for Wisdom. You can get greater stat pots for 6 out of 8 of your stats, and you can also get small life pots from both bosses. You can also get up to T13 weapons and T14 armor. As an Exalt dungeon, Both bosses can also drop a sword room. The exciting thing for me from both dungeons is the Trickster and Ninja sets. Notably, the Ninja set, because the Ninja set boasts not only the highest attainable Ninja HP, but also the highest attainable Ninja attack at 1200 HP and 92 attack. The Trickster set is less game-changing, but still boasts very high HP for its class. In terms of UTs, Fungal and Crystal have some very, very good abilities. In my opinion, though, Fungal actually has the better ones. From the Worm Mother, you can get the Priest's Fungal Tome, which is widely regarded as one of the best group healing items in the game despite recent nerfs. The Cave Dweller's Trap, which is one of the best, if not the best, single target DPS options for the Huntress. The Sea Shield, which used to give invulnerability, but now just gives armor, not as good as it used to be. The Mushroom spell for Wizard, which is again near the top DPS for its class. And from the Crystal entity, we have the Cloak of Refraction for Rogues, the Echo Prism for Tricksters, the Fractured Wakizashi for Samurai, and the Star of Enlightenment for Ninjas, all of which are solid items, but significantly alter the playstyle of each of their classes for special effects, so it's hard for me to say a just flat goodness rating when they change the playstyle as much as they do. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please consider dropping a sub or checking out the Patreon or merch shops. I will eventually do an O3 and Shatters guides, but I need to get much more consistent with those clears before I upload a guide. If there are any other cool video ideas you guys have, let me know in the comments below. A huge thanks to all my patrons as always, but until next time, keep it beefy, boys.
Hello there.